Water changes a hammer solution to nutrient control and reefing chemistry for ages. Replacing poor quality polluted water with new water on a regular basis just works, but how valuable are they? In terms of nutrient or nitrate and phosphate control, there's no question dilution does work, but exactly how effective is it when I do a 10% water change? Meaning 90% of whatever was in there is still in there. And so if I had 10 parts per million nitrate and I did a 10% water change, it probably just fell to 9 parts per million. And then you need to ask yourself, would I even be able to measure that with a common nitrate test kit? And the answer is probably no. It's also the most manual and often most expensive method of nutrient control. So just how valuable is it? Well, for me, I would actually call it pretty valuable and part of my overall approach. And 10% weekly is what I recommend to most people, only second to an otter water change system that change out a small amount every day. Not really because it's a solution to nitrate and phosphate problems, because feeding and filtration seems to solve that, but it's the buffer for all those inevitable mistakes. It's a buffer for when you may not be testing as often as you should, or maybe if your approach is not to test at all. It also catches things that you can't test for, meaning nitrate and phosphate we can fairly easily test for, but there's many things that come in with additives or foods that may pollute the tank and the water, but you can't test for them at all. So that dilution approach or water change of removing the polluted water and replacing it with fresh water just works. Water changes also help you catch a different type of pollution or toxin that is not as easy to recognize, meaning things that are acutely toxic that you put in your tank right now, you probably see immediately and be able to attribute. But there are other things that build up over the course of years rather than weeks or months. In that case, it's actually hard to identify when they build up or what you'd attribute them to. So an approach to dilution actually just solves that altogether. Water changes are also a component that stages of reefing conversation, meaning they might just matter a lot more upfront on that first tank or when you're setting up a brand new tank, because they're just a catch-all for all kinds of different mistakes that you can make in the tank, or also limited approaches or less effective approaches to filtration or even heavy-handed feeding common with new tanks. However, sometimes water changes just matter a lot less, which is typical with older tanks, more established 4, 5, and 6 year plus tanks that are just filled with coral. But there's often a lot of biological uptake happening in the tanks, but also sometimes that mentality actually catches up as well. There's occasional but ongoing mortalities going in the tank, and there really isn't an explanation why a coral is kicking the bucket every 3 months. Sometimes just tied to an aging or older mentality of things just die, which of course isn't true. Something caused that animal to die in the tank, and water changes are often just a useful buffer against the unknown. So that's probably the biggest thing to pick up today. There's just a lot of unknowns in reefing, and how those things accumulate over time even more so. I mean, we all have different size tanks, we have different export methods, different water change schedules, and we all use different additives and different amounts of them. And there's very little knowledge on the prolonged impact of using them over many years. And so part of that is just acknowledging the unknown and then accounting for it produces predictably improved results, and water changes probably the best way to do it. That said, water changes are not my favorite task, and because of that, they can go to the wayside over time. So the biggest thing we can do is just make them easier. So one of the things you could do is use something like a python, which makes it much easier to suck water out of the tank and have it go directly down the drain without having a mess on the floor. You can also decide how you go about it, meaning, do I change out 30% once a month just because it's easier to only have to do this 12 times a year? However, in that case, I'm getting the hose out and I'm probably making a big mess. Or is it easier just to do 10% once a week, where maybe it's only 1 or 2 buckets and it's just really easy to do? And then really, is an auto water change system like the dose from Neptune worth it? Where now all I need to do is fill up my bin with salt water and maybe only change it or fill it every month or 2. If you can implement an auto water change system on your tank, it's probably not just the reason why you're going to be doing water changes consistently 6 months from now. It's why you're going to be doing them consistently 6 years from now, and why between here and there, you're probably going to run into fewer issues along the way. So the next big question, this series has been nearly everything I've experienced and learned about nutrition and nutrients, the ocean and our reef tanks. So what's next? The answer is, I don't know. You'll have to subscribe and check out our channel page to find out, but there will be more.